You are listening to 106.7, Wilmington's Big Talker, and my name is Paul Vallone. I'd like to welcome you to Guns, Politics, and Freedom, where each Sunday at 5 p.m., as part of the Sunday Night Political Power Block, we give you the ammunition to better defend your gun rights. And I'd like to thank our sponsor, Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at hyattguns.com. In case you aren't familiar with me, I direct Grassroots North Carolina, or GRNC, since 1994, our state's most effective gun rights organization. As its director, I was involved in drafting and passing our original concealed handgun law. Since then, GRNC has gone on to engineer passage of concealed handgun reciprocity, our purchase permit bypass, castle doctrine and stand your ground, the expansion of concealed carry into state and municipal parks, restaurants, public assemblies, educational properties, and much more. Grassroots North Carolina is exactly what the name implies, a grassroots collection of people from all walks of life who share a common concern that our constitutionally guaranteed freedoms are being eroded. Check us out at grnc.org, that's grnc.org. Now, in gun rights news, you've heard this 1,000 times. Gun control advocates demanding a ban on what they call internet gun sales. They count on the public's ignorance that guns can't legally be shipped between individuals, of course, but when backed into that particular corner, they fall back on unfounded claims that guns are illegally changing hands in online sales. Oh, really? Guess what? Epic fail. According to the Daily Wire, investigators with the United States Government Accountability Office, the GAO, were dispatched to see whether private online sellers were engaging in selling firearms to people who are prohibited from owning firearms. The investigators attempted dozens of times to illegally purchase firearms from online sellers on the surface web, not the dark web, but were completely unsuccessful, going 0 for 72. Yes, 0 for 72. Moreover, sellers stated that they would not ship the firearm, that 27, I believe that was 29 sellers, said they would not sell the firearm. 27 refused after they learned that the attempted buyer was prohibited from buying, and in 5 instances, the accounts the GAO set up were frozen by the websites, which prohibited them from even accessing the forums. Better yet, the GAO study was commissioned by anti-gun Democrats, Representative Elijah Cummings from Maryland, and Senators Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, from Massachusetts, and Brian Schatz from Hawaii, based on a 2016 report from Obama's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, which claimed that, and I quote, anonymity of Internet sales makes it an ideal means for prohibited individuals to obtain illegal firearms, or not. Nice try, folks. As we keep telling you, law-abiding gun owners aren't the ones you need to worry about. Now, for a new semi-regular segment, The End of the World as We Know It.
It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
This segment of our show will feature the latest evidence that unless we take action immediately, Western culture as we know it is dead and the Age of Enlightenment is over. This week's entry comes from nationally syndicated columnist and George Mason University professor, black professor, I should note, Walter E. Williams, writing in AmmoLand.com, who himself quotes what he calls a tiny sampling from the conservative news source Campus Forum. And I quote, this stuff just cannot be believed. He says, Donna Riley, a professor at Purdue University School of Engineering Education, published an article in the most recent issue of the peer-reviewed Journal of Engineering Education positing that academic rigor is a dirty deed that upholds white, male, heterosexual privilege. Riley added that scientific knowledge itself is gendered, raced, and colonizing. Would you hire an engineering education graduate who has little mastery of the rigor of engineering? What does Riley's vision, if actually practiced by her colleagues, do to the worth of degrees in engineering education from Purdue held by female and black students? He goes on to say, sympathizing with Riley's version is Rochelle Gutierrez, a math education professor at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. In her recent book, she says, the ability to solve algebra and geometry problems perpetuates unearned privilege among whites. Who knew? Educators must be aware of the politics that mathematics brings in society, she says. She thinks that and I quote, on many levels, mathematics itself operates as whiteness. Mathematics itself operates as whiteness. After all, she adds, who gets credit for doing and developing mathematics? Who is capable in mathematics and who is seen as part of the mathematical community is generally viewed as whole. In other words, I guess if you succeed, therefore you should be disparaged. Got it. What's worse is the university's interim provost, John Wilkin, sanctioned her vision, telling Fox News that Gutierrez is an established and admired scholar who has been published in many peer-reviewed publications. I note that the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign's black students don't have the same admiration and stay away from her classes. Okay, then. Last February, a California State University Fullerton professor assaulted a CSUF Republican member during a demonstration during President Donald Trump's executive order against Donald Trump's executive order on immigration. The students identified the assailant as Eric Kanan, an anthropology professor. Fortunately, the school had the good sense to later suspend Kanan after confirming the allegations through an initial investigation. Last week, the presidents of 13 San Antonio colleges declared in an op-ed written by Rick Baser, president of the Higher Educational Council of San Antonio, and signed by San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg and 12 other members of the Higher Education Council, that, quote, hate speech and, quote, inappropriate messages should not be treated as free speech on college campuses. Their vision should be seen as tyranny. The true test of one's commitment to free speech, of course, is that free speech doesn't come when he permits people to be free to make statements that he does not find offensive. The true test of one's commitment to free speech comes when he permits people to make statements he does deem offensive. Then last year, University professor Rick Watson adopted a policy allowing students to select their own grade if they feel unduly stressed by the actual grade they receive in class. Benjamin Ayers, dean of the school's Terry College of Business, released a statement condemning Watson's pick-your-own-grade policy, calling it inappropriate. You think? He added, and I quote, rest assured that this ill-advised proposal will not be implemented in any Terry classroom. The University of Georgia upholds strict guidelines and academic policies to promote a culture of academic rigor, integrity, and honesty. Ayers' response gives us hope that all is not lost in terms of academic honesty. Finally, other campus good news is a report on the resignation of George I can't even pronounce this, Ciccarello Mayer, a white Drexel University professor who tweeted last winter, quote, all I want for Christmas is white genocide. He said that he resigned after his tenured position because threats against him and his family had become unsustainable. Williams goes on to say, if conservative students made such threats, they too could benefit from learning the principles of free speech.
The end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine.
You are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7 WilmingtonBigTalker.com. Right now, we're going to take a short break, after which we will resume with renowned gun writer David Codrea and his take on recent federal developments in gun legislation. My name is Paul Vallone, and you are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7 WilmingtonBigTalker.com, sponsored by Hyatt Gun Shop, America's largest gun shop. Check it out at HyattGuns.com. We are honored to have as our guest today noted gun writer David Codrea. David and I first met way back when at Examiner.com, when I was he was the National Gun Rights Examiner, and I was one of the state-level gun rights examiners. He is the winner of numerous gun rights journalistic awards, and he blogs at The War on Guns, Notes from the Resistance, which is waronguns.blogspot.com, as well as writing for AmmoLand.com, Guns Magazine. We're going to talk about his article in Guns Magazine today, Oath Keepers, and elsewhere. My recollection is that in the early days of the Obama administration, David was one of two people to originally bird dog Eric Holder and break the Fast and Furious story. Welcome, David.
Paul, good to be on the radio with you. I'm trying to remember the last time I actually saw you in person. I know we met at that Second Amendment March in Washington, D.C. back in 2010, I think it was. And I think I've seen you since then, either at NRA conventions or gun rights policy conferences.
Possibly the Gun Rights Policy Conference. I do tend to go to that. Usually, Alan Gottlieb tags me for the state-level panel, so more often than not, I'm there. Anyways, yeah, you might say that. So I was reading Guns Magazine, and I came across your latest article, What Happens in Vegas? Love the title, by the way, which details much of the aftermath of the Las Vegas shootings. Why don't you give our listeners a synopsis of the piece and what you were essentially, the message?
Yeah, well, first of all, understand that when I write for Guns Magazine, it's not contemporaneous, okay? The deadline for my submitting something actually comes out a couple months before the print magazine ever hits the stands, and that's a caveat I typically give on these things, that a lot of facts are going to have changed since this initial report has been filed. In this case, a lot of facts have not changed because authorities are keeping what they're uncovering in the investigation so close to the vest. And what that's doing is that, of course, is causing all kinds of conspiracy theories to arise and all kinds of well-deserved, I might say, distrust of anything that the government is going to say. And unfortunately, what that does is that does give rise to outlandish stuff getting out there that has no substantiation to it, and a lot of people tend to follow those things. But here's what we know. We know that after the shootings happened, the gun grabbers couldn't dance in enough blood. It's like somebody sent them a gift. They were also happy about it. And you saw things like Nancy Sinatra, okay, talk about a non-celebrity. She did These Boots and some stoner song, Vedra Is My Name, years back, and nobody's ever heard of her since. But here's a gal who has had nothing but multimillionaire celebrity privilege and bodyguards all of her life. And she's out there on Twitter because she's one of these, limousine communists saying the murderous members of the NRA should face a firing squad.
Oh, God.
Like somehow this is our fault. And Paul, there's 5 million of us. She wants genocide, and she wants us to give up our guns? Okay.
That says so much about the discourse recently, and exactly. I mean, we hear so much really nasty, violent, vitriolic stuff from the left lately. But go on, please continue.
Well, here's the upshot on all of this. Okay, we're told that now what we need to do is we need to get rid of bump stocks. Okay, these devices that basically do the same thing as if you hold your trigger finger properly and pull a rifle forward, you can get it to bump against the finger and fire in rapid succession. It's still one finger pull on the trigger per firing, but it happens at an accelerated pace. There was a time years back where ATF actually tried to regulate shoestrings that were tied the wrong way on a rifle because it could cause this accelerated rate of fire.
Well, let me ask you a question, though.
Sure.
I need to ask, this is something that I think our listeners need to understand. Why bump stocks? Why should we care? Okay, the people say correctly that it doesn't make a gun especially accurate. It makes it less accurate. Of course, the hunters who are ready to give up just about anything except their hunting shotguns tell us nobody needs them. Why should our listeners care about bump stocks?
They don't. Bump stocks are simply a convenient scapegoat target. If it were not bump stocks, next time around it would be something else. I've talked to you before about the concept in Hollywood of the MacGuffin. And the MacGuffin, just to briefly explain to the listeners, it's a plot device in movies that all the action revolves around. It is a thing that everybody is chasing. So it doesn't matter in this case if it's the Maltese Falcon. It doesn't matter if it's the Pink Panther Diamond. It doesn't matter if it's Pee Wee Herman's bicycle stolen and locked up in the non-existent basement of the Alamo. Okay, that is the MacGuffin. So this time around, it is the bump stocks. Next time around, it is going to be, prior restraints with no due process on excuses like mental health, or prior restraints with no due process on things like what is it that they're trying to push, the boyfriend loophole. Okay, so you don't even need to be a spouse with a restraining order. You can be a jilted one-night stand out for revenge. Okay, and you can get a restraining order put out and strip a fundamental constitutionally enumerated right without any due process whatsoever. And here's the problem, particularly with this kind of stuff, is that unless you have the knowledge and the wherewithal, most people aren't going to know how to fight it or have the means and the resources to fight it. And in the interim, they are going to become felons if they get caught with a gun that they own for whatever purposes they want. And Paul, in terms of this business of you don't need it, I'm sorry, but it is not in a free society. You don't get to tell me what I need or what I want, and I shouldn't have to need it. All I need to do is want it, and it's none of your business unless I'm making it your business.
Hear, hear. I've said that many times. It's not a bill of needs. Thank you very much. But, okay, so a lot of your article dealt with the left's assurances that we're all paranoid and nobody's out to take our guns. This kind of demonstrates otherwise, don't you think? You quoted some people that I love it when the left oversteps, like they have done recently. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, and here's the thing. For years, the Brady Center and the other gun grabber groups have been saying, you're paranoid if you think that there's any kind of slippery slope. Well, all you got to do is go back to their founding documents. All you got to do is go back to the founder of Handgun Control, which was the forerunner of the Brady campaign, but they had to change the name because they thought that, well, Handgun Control reveals too much of what we're about. And their founder, Nelson Pete Shields, he admitted as much back in 1976 when he basically said that, we're going to have to take it one step at a time. And then, talking about the first step is necessary given political realities, but ultimately it ends up being a total ban, make possession of all handguns and all handgun ammunition except for the military, police, licensed security guards, etc. Totally illegal. Okay,
yep.
And to further, bring that into the present, they were asking Nancy Pelosi And, what do you think about the bump stock bans? And she said, well, they say that if you give them the bump stocks, it's going to be a slippery slope. And then she said, I certainly hope so. So, in other words, they're going to take this, you give them any ground, you cede a beachhead to them, and they're going to occupy it, and then they are going to use that to prosecute their next incursion deeper into the territory. And the other analogy I use all the time, Paul, is it makes as much sense you're surrounded by a pack of starving jackals as thinking that you can throw them a scrap of meat and they're going to go away satisfied.
It's funny you mention that. I call that preemptive concession. And unfortunately, that is what the NRA tried to do with this, by claiming that the ATF should regulate these so-called bump stocks. As a matter of fact, I had Larry Pratt on the show, and he described it exactly the same way. Essentially, they figure that they could stave off regulation by having regulation. The problem with preemptive concession, like that jackal pack you're talking about, you throw them one piece of meat and they just want more. They're not willing to, to say, well, that's enough. The fact is, as soon as you concede something, they come for the rest of whatever it is you're conceding, and then some. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah, and when they say nobody's talking about taking away your guns, of course they are. Okay, but they're talking about taking it away one piece at a time. But yes, of course they're talking about taking away your guns, and that's the ultimate end goal down at the bottom of the slippery slope.
Yes, it is. And we're going to take a quick break right now. And you are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7, WilmingtonBigTalker.com. We're going to take a short break, after which we will resume with gun writer David Codrea and recent developments on federal gun legislation. My name is Paul Vallone, and you are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7, WilmingtonBigTalker.com. Our show is sponsored by Hyatt Gun Shop, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at HyattGuns.com. We are talking to gun writer David Codrea about his recent piece in Guns magazine entitled What Happens in Vegas. Ironically, David, in a couple of days, by the way, I'm going to go to Vegas for the SHOT Show, Shooting, Hunting, and Outdoor Trade Show, world's biggest gun show. But I'll talk more about that shortly. Anyways, you noted the irony that perennial gun banner Chuck Schumer is being the one calling for the dropping the bump stock issue. And then you've talked a little bit about the NRA strategy and punting it over to ATF and what's going on with that right now. Why don't you bring us up to speed on that, please?
Yeah, well, Schumer is a veteran, and he's been around long enough, and he's savvy enough to know a losing argument when he sees one, and he sees all the impulse control challenge Democrats that are out there trying to create a big hubbub over this, like they have a chance at the federal level to make this a hill worth dying on. And he recalls what Bill Clinton said about the 1994 so-called assault weapon ban and how that led to just tremendous Democrat losses. So he's saying, let's just talk about the budget and keep this off to the side. So where they're getting support for the bump stock ban is in so-called Republicans tripping all over themselves to do something. Every time there's something like this, we must do something, and no one ever has anything worth doing that's actually going to make a bit of difference. And so there is a bill that's being introduced, but NRA prefers to give cover to politicians because it's above all an access organization. And so what they did a preemptive surrender of their own, and they called on BATF to immediately review whether these devices comply with federal law. They said the NRA believes that devices designed to allow semi-automatic rifles to function like fully automatic rifles should be subject to additional regulations. Now, how they square this with their purposes and objectives, which basically calls for fidelity to the Second Amendment, when the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed, and when the whole purpose behind the Second Amendment was so that American people would have what Tench Cox said called every terrible implement of the soldier, okay? Yep. What in common use at the time actually means is in common use at the time by infantry soldiers that the American militia may have to once again protect against. Yeah. You know, it absolutely makes no sense. But
let me tell you something. I'm an NRA Life member, But, Vin Suprinowicz, you remember him, the columnist for the
sure.
Las Vegas paper, very libertarian guy, great writer. He once called the NRA the world's largest gun control organization. I'm not saying that I don't support some of the things they do, but periodically they adopt strategies which are downright wrong. And in this case, we've been telling people the same thing that you're saying, namely that punting it to the ATF is just a matter of preemptive concession that won't help anything. And in fact, initially the ATF punted it back to Congress and said, "Oh, we can't regulate that," didn't they? I mean, where's this going now? What's happening now?
They said we don't have authority. Right now, I think we're in what Shakespeare called a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Okay, I'm not sure that we're going to see movement on this without some significant changes. I think that enough people are uncertain. But the thing is, and the thing about NRA, like you, Paul, I am an NRA Life member. I have been since the early 90s, so I've got a stake in the organization. But again, if you go to, like, I think it was on AmmoLand, Marion Hammer, past president, saying that all these members that are running for the board by petition as opposed to being there due to the nominating committee, Wayne LaPierre's rubber stamp, everybody running by petition, she called the enemy within. And, I'm sorry, that's like saying that if you disagree with the president, you're un-American. No.
Unfortunately, that's a topic for a whole show. We could we could go. We'll have a show on the NRA sometime.
But let me just tell you what she said about the bump stock. She says, like all good, honest, law-abiding Americans, the NRA obeys the law. NRA has called for enforcing existing law. And I would have to throw back, wait a minute, what's the difference between that and enforce existing intolerable acts? Okay, so in other words, what you're saying is if Dianne Feinstein can get the votes to say, turn them all in, Mr. and Mrs. America, NRA's position is going to be turn them all in if you're a good, honest, law-abiding American?
Yeah, unfortunately, your logic is unassailable, no doubt about it. So, but as I say, the NRA will have that conversation another day. So anyways, the ATF punted it back to Congress. Congress, basically, because, as you noted, Chuck Schumer, I was going, oh, boy, has Chuck finally seen the light? No, of course not. He understands the political realities. He understands exactly, as you said, that it's going to cost the Democrats votes in the next election if they start pushing gun control. And so he's backed off. But now it's back to the ATF again, is it not?
Yeah, they have a proposed rule in the making where they're soliciting public comments. And this is very important because comments are due on the 25th of this month at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So we don't have a lot of time to get into it. So far, I think, I forget last time I looked, it was probably close to 6,000 comments. And, Paul, that's pathetic, okay?
It is pathetic, as a matter of fact.
I've said before, I mentioned briefly the Gun Rights Policy Conference. And the last time I went, I was impressed how the room was full, okay? Hundreds of people. But the question that I posed is, how come it's not overflowing? How come there aren't thousands of people? How come there aren't tens of thousands of people? Why can't we fill a stadium? The flaws that the NRA has, only so-called 5 million members, how come it's not 50 million members? How come Gun Owners of America is not 10 million members? How come your group is not several million members? How many gun owners are there in North Carolina? Why is it that it's always the same 1% at the top doing 98% of the work and everybody else doing what I call profiles in apathy is sitting there surprised, and they think their grand contribution to the cause is to make an anonymous Moen Lave comment under a blog post?
And I'll tell you something else, too. At one point in time, I used to say, well, that's the bad news, that only 1% of the gun owners actually get involved. The good news is that's better than on any other issue. But in the era of Trump, I think those numbers are changing because now, unfortunately, I call this the Trump slump, and this is what I discussed at the last Gun Rights Policy Conference. What's happening is that people figure, we elected Donald Trump. He's pro-gun. He's going to support our gun rights. We can all go home, go back to the football games, and ignore everything else now. Meanwhile, the left is, of course, frothing at the mouth, and they are now utterly activated. And so I wouldn't be surprised if a large number of those comments, a larger proportion than normal of those comments to the BATFE, aren't in favor of the bump stock ban. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I have not gone through the comments recently to where I can, give you any kind of accurate assessment on how it's running. I've seen a lot of good comments.
It is a serious concern that people are not actively, they're not actively engaged in this thing. And as you correctly note, we've only got till January 25th. I'm going to give it right now. Folks, grab a pen. Because we've shortened up what is a very long URL for public comments on this so-called bump stock ban. And it's very important that people go on for this bump stock ban because it ain't about bump stocks. This is about how fast you should be able to fire a semi-automatic firearm. And if we open this debate, what's going to happen is the debate becomes all about how fast is too fast, not to mention the fact that all of the proposals that have been considered thus far would also ban anything that increases the rate of fire of a semi-automatic firearm, including, muzzle compensators, trigger jobs, you name it. So we're asking people to go to tinyurl.com/Y is in Yankee, A is in Alpha, V is in Victor, P is in Papa, V is in Victor, B is in Bravo, the number 4, and then N as in November. Or you can go to grnc.org and hit alerts on the left side and see our alerts on the issue. grnc.org/ and then go to alerts on the left side of the page. We got maybe 20 more seconds, David. Tell us what you feel that we really need to know about this debate.
That it is not about bump stocks. I don't own a bump stock. I don't know if you do. I have no desire to own a bump stock. But I understand that it is not about bump stocks. It's about the McGovern of the day. It is about throwing a scrap of flesh to a starving pack of circling jackals. It is about Nancy Pelosi's slippery slope, and that's what this is about. And if you don't get involved, you are letting other people carry the load. And so, I don't know what else to say.
Hallelujah, David. And how do people find your stuff?
All my stuff is accessible via the War on Guns notes from the Resistance blog. It is waronguns.com, waronguns1word.com. That'll get you to my Guns Magazine posts. That'll get you to my Amaland posts, my Oath Keepers posts, and everything else, that I've ever written just about.
Awesome.
It'll get you to.
All right. Thank you very much, David, for joining us and for all you do. Folks, you are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom. We will resume after a short break with current events and also some details on the upcoming SHOT Show. My name is Paul Vallone, and you are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7, WilmingtonBigTalker.com, sponsored by Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop. Check them out at HyattGuns.com. Welcome back, folks. In this segment, I am recording from Las Vegas, where in just a few days begins the world's largest gun show, namely the Shooting, Hunting, and Outdoor Trade Show, known as the SHOT Show. And in a moment, I'm going to tell you all about that. But first of all, grab a pen, because I have some gun rights chores for you. In just a few days, January 25th to be exact, the public comment period closes for the BATF scheme to regulate so-called bump stocks. And although you might not care about bump stocks, you need to understand that this debate is not about bump stocks. All proposals to date would ban anything that increases the rate of fire of a semi-automatic, yes, that's semi-automatic, not fully automatic, firearm, meaning they would ban things like trigger jobs, muzzle compensators, optical sights, frankly, anything that allows you to hit a target faster. Even more significantly, if we roll over on this, I guarantee you the debate will then become all about how fast is too fast? Namely, how fast should some government bureaucrat let you fire a semi-automatic firearm, despite the fact that it's one shot per pull of the trigger, and by the time they are done, I can guarantee you that they will be pushing for banning anything beyond single-shot firearms. After all, why would you need more than one shot in 5 minutes to hunt deer, right? As though the Second Amendment had anything to do with hunting. So grab your pen, folks, and write down the following. grnc.org. That's like Grassroots North Carolina, my organization. grnc.org. I want you to go there and click on the left side where you see GRNC alerts, which will lead you to the links for our alert and the BATF comment page, as well as a copy and paste message that will take you only a minute or two to send. The bottom line is when we put out these legislative alerts, we want to make it as easy as possible. We know you don't have a lot of time. We know there's a lot of technical detail involved in this stuff. Matter of fact, I tell people in my legislative tactics seminars, I say, lest you believe this process is designed to exclude you, let me assure you that it is. So once again, that's grnc.org. Click on GRNC alerts on the left side of the page and make sure that you comment to the BATF and tell them not to ban their so-called bump stocks, and make sure that comment is before January 25th. Now, on to your reward, I guess. Every January since 1979, the gun industry's National Shooting Sports Foundation holds what is undoubtedly the largest gun show in the world. Almost invariably, it is held in Las Vegas. They tried other cities, but the year they held it in Atlanta, that fine city said thank you to them for spending the money by announcing it would join other cities in suing gun makers on the opening day of the show. Anyway, unlike most gun shows, at the SHOT Show, you can't take home any guns, although you can sign a multi-million-dollar contract to outfit your military or your police force if you like. What you can do, however, is check out hands-on nearly any gun or gun accessory made anywhere in the world. That is because these many thousands of guns with firing pins removed are tethered to displays for you to handle, dry fire, and maybe if you're like me, maybe just fondle just a little bit. And in fact, I don't know exactly how many exhibitors there are, but my guess by looking at the catalog is somewhere on the order of 1,400 different exhibitors. This is the Paris Air Show of gun shows, folks. Manufacturers set up elaborate, sometimes multi-floor displays like small buildings you can wander through, and even conference rooms where you can sign that multi-million-dollar contract if you are so inclined. Also on hand are representatives from each manufacturer to answer any of the countless questions which invariably arise when faced with such a myriad of guns. It is also the biggest meeting of who's who in the gun world, including many of the famed gun rights advocates, the gun writers you've read in Guns and Ammo and other magazines, defensive firearms gurus, the popular talk show hosts, people like Tom Gresham, for example, Hollywood stars, and top competitive shooters. One year I managed to get competitive handgun tips from Sig Sauer's Max Michel. Another time, members of Team Benelli schooled me in shotgun techniques for 3-gun competition. And then, of course, there was the year that the legendary Jeff Cooper signed my copy of his biography. Every year I try to get an autograph from Lee Ermey, but every year the line is frankly just too damn long. So, there's, of course, also lots of stuff that I can't avail myself of, including seminars and courses for firearms industry retailers, law enforcement officers, and far much more. Best of all is the industry range day on the day before the show, where a lucky few get to shoot all of the latest stuff. I'm still working on wrangling an invitation to that one. I haven't managed it yet. The SHOT Show is so vast that in recent years it has overflowed from the huge Sands Expo and Convention Center into the adjoining Venetian and Palazzo hotels with 3 levels and multiple halls dedicated to law enforcement, shooting and hunting, firearms and ammunition, accessories, you name it, different halls for different stuff. Although the show itself runs from Tuesday through Friday, I normally only have a couple of days to see it, so I actually have never managed to make it through the entire show. But now I'm afraid I have some bad news. Like many of the world's most interesting events, you have to know somebody to get in. Theoretically, the SHOT Show is open only to retailers, industry insiders, military and law enforcement, that sort of thing, and of course the media. But I say theoretically because last year 65,000 people managed to meet those criteria and to attend. Now, thanks to my writing gig, I get in on journalist credentials. Although I wonder sometimes if that's always a good thing. If you ever want to get some seriously dirty looks, wear media credentials in a gun show. But most who do attend do so as part of contingents from gun shops and independent gun dealers. Do you remember that guy at your gun club who has an FFL, that's a federal firearms license? Be really nice to him because he can get in and maybe he can get you in. So in coming weeks, I hope to have some interesting interviews for you from the show, as well as news, exciting developments, and maybe just a little kid in the candy store enthusiasm. Starting this Tuesday night, January 23rd, I will be blogging and posting photos of the show that you can find via my website at gunspoliticsandfreedom.com. Spell out that A-N-D. Again, that's gunspoliticsandfreedom.com. But first, I want to reiterate, you need to go to comment to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives via their comment page on their Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, which closes on January 25th, and let them know that you do not appreciate their attempts to regulate how fast you can shoot a semi-automatic firearm, whether the so-called cause is bump stocks or whatever other low-hanging fruit the gun control crowd can think of to ban today, because the fact is they're going to ban whatever they can, anytime they can. So grab that pen, folks, and write down GRNC, like Grassroots North Carolina, grnc.org, grnc.org, and go to the left side of the page for alerts, where that will lead you to the comment page for the BATF. Meanwhile, my name is Paul Vallone, and you have been listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom on Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7, wilmingtonbigtalker.com, where each Sunday at 5 p.m., as part of the Sunday Night Political Power Block, we give you the ammunition to better defend your right to keep and bear arms. Please check out our sponsor, Hyatt Guns, America's largest gun shop at hyattguns.com. I also encourage you to check out my website at gunspoliticsandfreedom.com, again, spell out that and, where you can find both my writings and earlier editions of the show. See you next Sunday at 5.